Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another live with Sangeeta and myself on Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Today, we have a very special guest, Teeshal Bal, who I have known for a while now and had a great introduction with her long time back when I started my journey into life coaching. And it's been a pleasure knowing her. She is a unique blend of entrepreneurship combined with engineering, project management, and leadership coaching skills. She's currently working as a program manager in a rail industry and also have a couple of side hustles. She's really passionate for her personal development along with entrepreneurship and has resulted in setting up not-for-profit social enterprise called Grit Leadership, where 100% of the profits are channeled into the delivery of resilience programs targeted into the girls to become unstoppable women. Teeshal is a big believer of power of association, and her learnings from successful entrepreneurs and ongoing mentoring from them, she's now able to pay forward. So welcome, Teeshal. It's great pleasure to have you here to learn from you and share your story. And obviously, Sangeeta is here to join us as well. Sangeeta, welcome. And Teeshal,
I was going to say thank you. Sorry, thank you very much, Vinari. Thank you very much for having me here today.
Oh, you're welcome. Absolutely pleasure, Teeshal. So we'll start today, and we spoke about this fair bit, when we first met around your journey and how your career has carved over the years. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You wear two hats of being in corporate and running your own not-for-profit enterprise. How did this all come about, and how are you juggling and balancing the act of not only corporate but also your business and a mother of two kids?
Wow, that's a pretty loaded question in itself to start with. And I guess when someone sort of asks you to sort of tell about yourself, the question is how long is a piece of string and where do I start? So I'm originally from Malaysia, very proud to call Australia home for the last 20 plus years. Civil engineer by trade and have built startups in the area of logistics, property and leadership development. So very grateful for the successful career to date, but I think I'm really more excited about the journey I'm on now as an entrepreneur. But I think most importantly, I'm a mom to two beautiful girls, and I think I need to confess that I can't cook to save my life, really. So yes, I can do quite a few things, but cooking is definitely not one of my fortes. But to answer your question, how did it kind of all come about? Geez, being a Southeast Asian woman, growing up in a traditional sort of home, it's like, study really hard, get a really good job, keep climbing the corporate ladder, and then life's going to be so good for you. And you do that, like you listen to your parents and you do that. And then you reach to a point where you go, is this it? Is this it? Like, I'm doing 20 years, 15 is like, okay. I was like, Mom, this is not what the professional journey was all carved out to be. Like, there was like this dream of what you're going to be, what you're going to be when you grow up, what you're going to be when you grow up. And then when you do it and you go, oh, this is it. Like, she feel a little bit disappointed because it's not ticking all the boxes. And I guess that's what it was. It's that sense of fulfillment. And I just felt that I wasn't getting that sense of fulfillment just from my corporate career. And I don't mean to actually sound ungrateful, because I am very, very grateful for the journey that I've been on. But I just felt that, you've got one life, make it count, do more, and just live. And I guess that was the start of the entrepreneurship journey. But that started like, how many years ago now? It's about 20 years ago. So it started pretty young.
Right.
Just don't look at the white
How
guys.
exciting. Yeah. I can't see any.
Okay, good. Blending camera.
But that's fascinating. Like, I think a lot of us, and Viniti and I have spoken about this before in the group as well, like a lot of us, that's sort of a very similar journey that many of us go through is, we do that corporate ladder thing, and then you realize that there's more, I need more, like this is not cutting it for me, and you just want to do something else. So, it's so inspiring to see people like you, and especially if you started 20 years ago and you're still at it, like that is so inspiring to see. That's fantastic.
It hasn't been a bit of roses, though. I'm not going to say.
Interesting. You say that, Teeshal, because I remember something that you mentioned about how your first business did not do very well, and how you did not, I suppose the trust wasn't there and you felt cheated or you got cheated on it, and it did not stop you from then going ahead either ways. You still went on and you started another business, and showing that resilience around that. Tell us a little bit more around in that space. How did you? Is that something that was ingrained in you as a professional of color, or something that you kind of built? Did you pick it up from your parents, your friends, your circle of influence? How did you? It's so hard when you are pushed down to the way you were to really lift back again and say, I'm going to go do it again. How did you go about that?
It's so funny you say that, because I remember having a conversation with my mom before I ventured into business, and she said, please, just don't do this. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, just stick to your job. You'll be safer there. And I'm like, but Mom, if I don't try this, how do I know? She goes, business is for people who are crooked. Business is for people who are cunning and have got a sly side to them. And because you don't have it in you, like really you don't. Like you're too straight, just stick to a job. I was really disappointed. I was like, Ma, seriously, I can do this. And I guess with the first experience, I think I was like 20, 25, okay, maybe it's not 20 years, I think it was like 17 years in this, since we first started our first business. But at that point, Rav and I, so my husband and I, we started up a franchise from scratch. So we bought the master license in Western Australia to start up a company called Mailpost. And we were the youngest and the most inexperienced. We partnered with other shareholders, if you like, that were silent partners. And I thought, this is awesome, ground floor opportunity, learn everything from all these amazing people who've been in business for 30, 40 years, right? So what can possibly go wrong? And when we got into it, I was like, oh, so we got to do the marketing, the business development, like finding clients and product and supply, and oh my God, there was so much to think about. And then recruitment and looking, hiring people, legal side of things, marketing. I was like, wow, that was so much to consider. We learned heaps, and in a very short period of time, when I say short period, about 2 years, we actually grew from nothing to 150 franchises in Western Australia. So I was a very young director at that point. One of the partners that we had was he owned like 20 H&R blocks across in Western Australia. So I was like, oh, he was our accountant. And things were really, really well until the day came where our licensor was actually based in New South Wales, and we had a trust account, and 2 weeks before Christmas, all money was siphoned out of our bank account. And I started getting calls, and people were like, yes, we haven't got paid. Like, what's going on? And I was like, no, but we don't make payments. Like, it's done by the head office in Sydney. And there was no money in the bank account. People are calling and not happy. And I was like, what do we do? And I spoke to Kevin, who's the accountant. He goes, Teeshal, we have no choice. You're a director of the company. You can't be seen trading insolvent. We've got to liquidate. We've got to close doors. Because we couldn't get hold of the licensor, and it just disappeared. And before you know it, we had 180 people in a hall, everyone demanding answers, and all they could see was me. Because all the shareholders who were silent just weren't there. No one would pick up the phone anymore, right? And I remember that day so clearly, like it was yesterday. And they said, you took our money, like what's happening? And I was like, no, I've actually lost money too, it's not me. But at the end of the day, they don't care. You're the person. It must be you do something about it. And Kevin said to me, and he said, Teeshal, we're doing pretty well, so we can just take a loan, pay off whatever, the running expenses right now and start again. And I learned very early on that when you betray someone's trust, it is very, very hard to get it back again. It doesn't matter how awesome your opportunity is. It doesn't matter the potential. Don't care. That trust is broken. So I think I learned that very, very, very early on, and I kind of understand where my mom was coming from. And she's like, oh, this big bad, wicked world sort of out there. But I think that sort of experience taught me heaps. But I definitely licked my wounds and kind of went back into corporate, went back into engineering for a while, but that only lasted like 2 years. And I was like, what's next? And then we started up a renovation. We started flipping properties, really, really liked properties. And then my friends were like, man, you're flipping it very, very quickly. 4 weeks, you're in, out, your property's back on the market, it's completely styled. Start up your own company. And I was like, that's a pretty good idea. Maybe you should do that. Where do I start? How do I get clients? Like, what do I do? So there was like a Better Homes and Gardens, those sort of exhibition. I thought, right, maybe you just set up a booth and say, hey, open for business, and maybe people will just keep coming to you. Did not happen. We went there 3 times and no clients. And I was like, what's going on? Everyone's having heaps of people swarming to their booth, but no one's coming to mine. Maybe the price is too much. Maybe I just have to drop the price. So it was like cheaper than cheap renovation. You gotta renovate with us. That was my slogan. And I attracted people with cheaper mentality. So but what I did realize that just throughout that journey was that I looked at people on stage, like, in these exhibitions, and when people were talking on stage, they were getting a lot of attraction. Like, people were swarming towards that. And I went, right, maybe I just need to be an authority who knows what they're talking about. So I was like, maybe I'll do this then. So the next time around, wrote a couple of ebooks, and I told the guy at the, who was running the exhibition, I was like, you need to get me on that stage. And did that. So when we got on stage, when there was a lot of people who came to listen to what I had to say, and then things sort of started from there. It was pretty humble sort of beginnings. And then after sort of the first year, we were sort of renovating 30-40 properties at that point, and then things really picked up, which was awesome. Except the whole idea of getting into business was to have more time with my girls, which I had 0 time. So I was actually quite, I was very delusioned about the idea of being in business, like flexible time, work on my own, like do whatever I feel like man.
Nothing of that household, eh?
So it's a raw sort of, that was a raw reality that kind of just slapped you in the face, going, hey, you want to be a businesswoman? That's great. But you got to be willing to roll up your sleeves and actually do the hard work. Like, it's just not going to come on a silver platter to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So true about the businesses. As you mentioned, I can relate to that. When I started, and I'm sure so can Sangeeta. Now, just coming back to being on the stage and that building of trust. Communication really plays a very big role in both, building trust or even, being able to go up on the stage. And I recently posted a poll in our community around, people wanting to speak publicly and present, and they stop themselves from doing that because of various fears and reasons. How important, or how did you see yourself evolving in that space of communication, and see that really helping you in building your career, both in your corporate as well as in your business area? How important did you think that piece of the string was, and realizing where it was important, how did you go about building it?
Yeah. Another very loaded question, Minati, but here you go. Okay, so communication, is the foundation of every relationship, right? Whether it's with yourself, whether it's your partner, your children, your manager, stakeholders, it could be anything. Like, communication is the essence and foundation of every relationship. But why do we communicate? It's to connect, right? And you connect to build trust. Right, so all of those things are actually linked together. Some people say, "Hey, you either have it or you don't have it in you." I just totally disagree with that sort of thinking, because when you think about it, like a baby's born into the world, and you go, a baby can get exactly what they want. How is it? No words coming out of their mouth, but they can cry. They can show enough sort of facial expression that they want something, right? And you give them the attention that they're craving for, or they're demanding rather. So I feel communication is one of those things where it's a really big topic in itself. But and as you know, Benati, coming from life coaching college and stuff like that, we talk about communication being verbal and non-verbal communication, right? So here's a question: when you think about communication, what essence of communication plays the biggest part? Is it your body language? Is it your tonality? Is it your words? What would it be? What do you think carries the most amount of weight? You probably can't answer that question.
It really depends.
Because you probably know. Sorry, Sangeeta?
Well, that's why I don't want to answer.
I said it depends, right? So if you're sitting in front of someone physically, obviously your body language speaks a lot. So it's not just your words, it's not just your tonality that speaks. But of course, if you're on the phone with somebody, they can't really sense your body language. It differs, I suppose, in terms of the medium as well.
That's actually a really interesting observation, though, because when you're actually on the phone with someone, you should try this as an experiment. If you were smiling, right, your head up and you're smiling and you actually took a call, as opposed to like you feeling like quite sluggish and take a call, there is actually a difference. So that whole body language definitely plays a part. And it's really interesting. I was running a very mini session with someone, and I did this. I'm so sorry, I don't want to break your speakers, but I did this experiment. I said, I love coaching, right? So then I was like, so what element of that, like, because they say words are really important when you're communicating. And I said, I love coaching. So does that mean I love coaching? Because, but your face didn't look like you love coaching. Or your tonality didn't actually show that you love coaching. Like, so, the words really matter. So at the end of the day, I believe like that body language and tonality probably plays more of a role than the words itself. And it's quite classic, you go into an interview with someone, you look at them and you go, yeah, that person's going to do all right. Like you almost have to have this pre notion of how things are going to play out by just watching them. And how is it that you can make such conclusion without even actually hearing the first word that came out of their mouth? So yeah, I reckon body language probably plays a very, very big role. And just being consciously aware of how you're actually showing up and being present with others.
Yeah. When you talk
Absolutely.
about communication, what's one of the things that you think, Teeshal, is, body language is one piece, but what is the one thing that you find that people miss out on? What is the one thing that you feel like, if they only did that better? Body language being one side of things, but what do you find in your experience?
My mentor shared this amazing quote with me. He says, always seek to understand before being understood. I was like, what does that even mean? Right? Like and then I literally had to play it over and over again in my head. It's like, seek to understand before being understood. And the penny dropped with me when you're actually communicating with people, because you always think you know. Someone says one thing and you go, oh yeah, I know what you mean. And then you have this assumption in your head and you're playing this story in your head going, I know exactly what you mean. I've been there, done that. And then you go off on a tangent and you haven't actually taken enough time to sort of dig deeper and work out, is that really what they meant or was it something else? So I think with communication, it's just that willing to sort of just take a bit of a breather, ask a few more questions, and really clarify what the person is actually saying to you before you jump into your own conclusion, I think is super, super key. And I think that's what's missing. And it's classic even when I interview people in my team. So I lead a team of 20 plus within Metro. We deliver and support infrastructure projects, and I interview quite a lot of people. The build high performing teams, that's part of my job. And when I go through CVs, I'm like, okay, this is like a migrant. Yes, I want to give an opportunity to this person. So I do. I shortlist, and you've got to help people, right? Because at some point, someone helped me, and I had nothing to my name at that point. And when these candidates sort of come through, and a lot of them are people of color, migrants that come into the country, and they've got great credentials and great skill set, and you're not questioning any of that. But now it's the opportunity for them to make an impression, because that's what you need to do in an interview, right? You've got to sell yourself. But you know what I mean when I say sell yourself, like just make a good impression. Yeah. And as they're doing that, and I'm like cringing, going, no, don't say that, because in their mind it's all about, what can you give me? What can you do for me, right? As opposed to, what can I do for you? What value can I add to you and your organization? How can I serve you? And I think that's what's missing, is a lot of people sort of come into these interview settings, or even this conversation, even when you're trying to negotiate or you're trying to manage difficult stakeholders. It's all about, I need this and I need you to do this. No. Flip it. Go back into these sort of meetings and say, what can I do to serve you? How can I alleviate your stress and your problem right now? What can I do to help? And I think just having that one switch does wonders.
Yeah. Very interesting. Today only I was having this discussion, and what I have observed, a lot of professionals of colors, when they are unhappy with, I suppose, a situation, rather than voicing it out, they act or react, as I would call it. Like they either, if you're in a corporate world, they would start taking on assuming that, maybe my manager doesn't like me, that's why I'm not getting promotion. Why did the other person get a promotion? I didn't get it. Maybe I need to start looking for a job elsewhere. This person doesn't value me anymore. All that negative self-talk, Teeshal, we constantly talk about. What's the one thing that you would want to tell people in terms of communication is how to deal with that, voices in the head that we are constantly dealing with? We are sitting in an interview, we are doing a presentation, because when you're talking to yourself in that tonality or that language, you're constantly going to then behave in a certain manner, which is going to be directly proportionate to the amount of things you're telling yourself in the head. And then you come out blabbering, even though you know so much about something, you start blabbering about it, and it doesn't look that well articulated and well spoken. So how do you deal with that kind of self-talk, before, let's say, event or before an interview, to make sure that you're communicating really effectively?
And yeah, well, I guess we all have that little voices in our head, right? The one that's quite resourceful and trying to uplift and get you excited about doing things, and the other one that's sort of drawing you down and telling you why it didn't work. And that exists in every person. There's something else that my mentor actually shared with me. He said, often we keep listening to ourselves, but we don't talk to ourselves. Right? We listen to ourselves a lot. Like, you listen and you pay attention to all this chatterbox that's just going on in your head, right? But you're not talking back. And you used a really good, you said self-talk, but how many people actually do self-talk? Most people just listen. And there was a really, really cool self-talk that I've started to actually practice right now. And it goes like this. It says, I am capable of achieving my dreams. I demand of myself consistent and persistent action to make it happen. Sounds really simple, right? I'm capable of achieving my dreams. I demand of myself consistent and persistent action to make it happen. And this mantra, I mean, it could be any type of affirmation that that someone is comfortable with, but sort of sharing an affirmation with yourself and saying it to yourself, like literally a self-talk in front of the mirror, looking at yourself eye to eye on the mirror, and actually saying these things is what would actually lift you. Because often what's missing, when you're talking about people who actually have all the stories playing in their head, or they make these rash decisions, it all just comes down to their self-image. What do you think you're worth right now? Like, should I do this? Should I not do this? This person like me, that person like all this chatter happening. But I think it all comes down to your self-image. Then the question becomes, how do you raise your self-image? What do you do? And I think that starting point is that self-talk. Like actually using affirmations that actually help lift you and say like daily. I think that's probably the starting point.
Good stuff. Just a quick reminder to everybody who's watching: the comment section is open. So if you have any questions for Teeshal, please do pop them in there. We'd love to ask some questions. But for now, Teeshal, I want to ask you something. So in your experience, what has been one of the times where you've gone out there and actually stood on stage and had and given a speech, but felt the nerves or felt fear or felt like after you've finished the speech, you come off and you're like, that just didn't go to what I to plan, like that was just not the way it should have gone? Like, give us a little bit of a story, like have you gone through those phases? Because I assume everybody who speaks on stage goes through that at some point or the other, but tell us your story.
Are you kidding me? Sometime or other, man, I think it was like 10 times, probably 8 or 9 times that's actually happening. and that nerve, like you would think after speaking for quite a long time, you'd be like, I've got this, I'm pretty cool, like I've done this so many times, but this will be easy for me. But man, those runs to the toilet, the heart's like beating, it feels like you're gonna pop out, like you go through all these emotions and you think like you get it by now, but you don't. And it's actually not a bad thing to still have those nerves, because what it does is it keeps you on edge, right? It gets that adrenaline sort of rushing through. Got one other one that's popped in. Sorry guys. But yeah, definitely have had a lot of those situations. I think when I was sharing with you before, when we were at the Better Home and Garden, and I was actually trying to get to actually address a crowd. What I didn't share with you was when I actually ended up addressing a big crowd and they came rushing to our stall and stuff like that. Prior to that, I actually asked for an opportunity to speak, and they said, "Hey, Teeshal, I know you wanted to speak. There's actually a slot that's just come open. This person's actually not feeling really well. Do you want to take this person's place?" I was like, "Yeah, definitely, please." So I went in there thinking I was going to get a crowd, right? Guess how many people I had in the audience? 0. Like no audience. Okay. No audience. So, and I was looking at the MC, and he goes, "Teeshal, time, start. Like, go." And I'm like now? Like, talk to whom? Like, no one's here.
Yeah. No.
He's like, just start, and they'll keep coming. And I'm like, okay, I've got it. And this is really strange because there's no audience. You're just looking at the MC and like looking at him, thinking, okay, I'll talk to him. Probably 10 minutes go past. I see someone walking, right? Someone walking, and then they sit in the chair, right? Because they're carrying all these little bags and stuff like that from doing their show rounds.
Yeah.
And he sits there, and so all my attention and focus is on this one guy, right? Like my one person that's in the audience. So I'm like focusing, looking at him, going, yes, like listen to me. This is what I'm talking about, stuff like that. I don't know. 5 minutes in, he's nodded off. He has actually slept. His wife was just really tired, gave him all the bags, asked him to sit down there and just go rest here. I'll just keep walking and just. Yeah. And I was like, this is my one and only person who listened to me. And he slept off. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I can't be that bad. You got to start somewhere, though. I mean, and that's the thing, right? The amazing thing is these are the stories that you want to share. Like, how boring would it be if we got it right the first time round? How boring would it be that if we were perfect? What stories are you going to be able to share? How are you going to be able to inspire others that if you did it all right? So I reckon it's good to make those mistakes. You just go in there and do it. What's the worst that's going to happen? We'll laugh at you, laugh back, and then just keep moving on.
This is one thing I really like sharing. Sorry, this is one thing that I really like sharing with people around. Feel the fear and do it anyway. So I love that story because it's like, I felt all the butterflies, but just do it anyway.
Just keep going at it. Yeah.
You literally took the words out of my mouth. That was exactly what I was going to say. Susan Jeffers wrote that book, right? Feel the fear and do it anyway. Yeah. And there's one thing that she shared in that book, and she says that if you're growing, you're always going to feel fear. So just get used to it.
Yeah.
And
that's a beautiful thing to add.
Yeah. You just got to keep going.
We just got to keep going. Yeah. We did have a question early this evening from one of our members around how much communication is adequate in terms of how much, and it's a very, very interesting question because I see this coming from a lot of professionals of colors and especially migrants who have grown up in home country, Southeast Asia, in typical around the cultural differences around how much should you talk to your manager about your aspirations, how much should you talk to your manager about the problems you are having, or how much frankness should you show at a workplace. So what's your take on that? Like, what's the right or adequate amount of communication?
So I guess I probably should start by saying, when I lead my teams, people would say, especially specifically women or even people of color would be expecting someone tapping them on the shoulder and saying, awesome job, man. Like, you're so good at what you do. You really deserve a promotion right now. That rarely happens, right? And then they'll be saying to them, I just don't understand what's happened. I've put in all this effort. I've done everything right, but no one's giving me a promotion. Have you asked? So, I kind of insinuated that, I was working really hard and I'm really interested about progressing. I'm like, right, but did you ask the question? So I guess that's one part of it. And I think there's also this thinking where people go, we've got human resource and we've got the, people and culture and their team and stuff like that. A lot of people think that their job is to think about people's career pathway and where they're going to go. And frankly, they don't actually have time for that. So, they don't. So no one's thinking about you and your progress and where you're going. No one is. So I think one
other than you.
Things, yeah, correct. Correct. So one thing I should definitely share, like even with my team, and I said, I don't know what's in your mind. I don't know where you want to go. You're starting off as a project engineer. You probably want to get up to a program manager. What is the career pathway? Like, I don't even know how you're going to get there, but let's talk about it. What do you like? What do you not like? How do you think it's going to how do you think it's going to work? Because oftentimes when you actually go to your managers, they want a solution. Don't give them a problem without a plan. Tell them what you want them to do. Like, you say, hey, I'm here, I want to go there. I feel like there's a gap in this area. I think I've got this skills and I might be able to support you with this. What do you think? It's like, it's you literally giving them a problem and you go, I've got a solution, I've got a roadmap. Do you support this? Yes, no, you get the answer straight away, right? And that sort of gives you that peace of mind knowing I kind of know where I stand right now. And if it's a no, like for example, they just don't have opportunity to actually climb the corporate food chain in that particular section, at least you get your answers pretty early on and you don't feel like, okay, I'm really disappointed. I've done 5 years here and I'm still not moving. So I think having that honest conversation is important. But in terms of how much conversation, if your manager is not organizing one-on-ones with you, you do it. You initiate it. You have a chat with them. Like, I don't think you can over-communicate. I honestly think you can't over-communicate, because I think it's better for someone to know, okay, like I know this is what you want, as opposed to guessing this is what I think you want. So and I think Sorry, go on.
No, you go. I know it's a bit of a lag, so we're.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, in the essence of any communication is building that trust, right? So when you actually have a trusting relationship with someone, you wouldn't sort of say, am I talking too much? Like, am I sharing too much information with you? You don't say that with someone that you've built really good trust with, right? You just share, you just speak, and you just be who you are. But oftentimes when people ask those sort of questions, it's because they haven't built that trusting relationship with someone. That's why there's all these questions and you feel like, I need a manual right now. It tells me, how many times do I speak to a manager? How long should I speak to them? How many questions can I ask? Like, you feel like everything needs to be a process, right? But in actual fact, we're dealing with humans.
Very well put, Teeshal. I think that's an important thing to talk about in an environment that we are in, especially because as we were talking about it, I kind of realized that a lot of us come from that Asian or South Asian countries where the growth in the organization, firstly, there is a lot of I suppose credibility paid to loyalty to the organization. So people want to stay in the same organization for their entire life. That's how you grow up. Most of us grow up. And secondly, there is this expectation from the organization's end that once a role has been played in an organization as an employee for a couple of years, you automatically become eligible for that next level promotion, which is a very different culture in Australia. And I think it's very less known for the migrants who come from that work, who migrate here through their companies, coming through that offshoring company, who come there because they haven't grown up here and they don't understand that in Australia, your career progression is not linear. It's nowhere close to being linear. You ask for the role that you want, and then you either work it up or you change organization. So even change career. Look, a lot of people we have brought here have changed their career paths and climbed up the ladder in very, very weird way, which is very not something that comes from that background who actually migrate. So I suppose to that point, how would you recommend that those migrants or those professionals of colors who have that limiting belief that their organization should push them up the ladder should try to break that barrier and kind of work towards what they want, not what the organization wants, if it makes sense?
Yeah. This is a bit of a tricky question for me, only because in my career, like I said, it's not linear, right? It's not like do this, then you get there. But one thing that has worked in my favor is, I think I go off by the motto of find a need, feel the need, right? If there's a need, you feel the need, right? So to give you an example, so before being promoted to a program manager, I was carrying out a role as a senior PM, and and in the organization there was we were talking about assurance. I'm sorry, it's going to sound a little bit boring, but it's all to do with safety and the risk side of things. And there was a clear gap in the organization, and no one was actually taking ownership of that. And the company could do more, but they weren't doing more. No one was putting their hand up. And I just went. I spoke to the manager and I said, hey, there's clearly a gap in this area. No one's actually filling it. If we don't do this right, these are all the different things that can actually go wrong. How would you feel if I actually sort of stepped in and actually help out? And they're like, oh, but on top of whatever you're doing? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I'll be able to work it out. He's like, yeah, man, go for your life, right? So I kind of filled that role in, and then I spoke to my manager and I said, I'd like to actually put up a case, So currently I'm doing this, and this is what I've done, and that was the problem, and this is how I solved it. I really see the need to create this role that can do X, Y, and Z. They were like, haven't really thought of that before. And I was like, yeah, but there's a need for this. And they're like, yeah, no, you're right. So I've gone to them with a problem, a solution, and I just went, just do this. So I just don't, that's why in my mind, and I've done this a couple of times, not just the once, and I think to myself, yes, there is a path, the pathway is there for a purpose, right? But not everything needs to fit into a mold. Because every organization would actually have different issues. People come into roles with different strengths as well. But if you can see a need that needs to be filled, fill it. Then build your case as to why you're probably best suited to fill that need and take on that role. So I think that's really one opportunity to sort of think outside the box and feel that you don't actually need to go step all the way up.
Yes, good points. And in terms of, a lot of times there's also things like miscommunication that happens, right? And especially in organizations, there's a lot of miscommunication that happens at times too. Have you had any experience with miscommunications, and what do you think brings about miscommunications? A lot of times for people of color who come from different countries, there's certain things they're trying to say or certain things they're trying to communicate to their peers, to their bosses, to their managers. And it so happens that, there's always misunderstandings that come about because of the way they communicate, the way they actually, put that opposition the things that they're saying. So tell us a little bit about miscommunication, because I think that is one area of communication that doesn't get talked about a lot. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I feel like 90% of all challenges at work or anywhere effectively is miscommunication. Man, I would argue with my husband about something, and at the end of the day, it's either I didn't hear something properly or he didn't say something the right way, and then there's a bit of a misunderstanding. So it's very easy for it to happen, and it's taken up by 100 notches when you're actually in a work environment. More so, I'll give you an example. There was a person in my team, and we're talking about development plans and progressing career and stuff like that, and was very much into my title. And so he's from a migrant background. He's like, oh, but I want to be called a senior project engineer, a senior sort of role. And people just couldn't understand. So his direct manager basically said to that, I don't understand. This guy hasn't been in this role for too long. He's not asking for more money. He just wants this title. What is it? He goes, oh, well, why are people so hung up on the title? Wouldn't the money be more important than the title? And that was a clear example whereby you have people who are from different cultural background in a room talking about development plans, and this guy's going, where would you like to progress? Because I want to get up there. I want to get to the manager. Because, oh, you're after more money? No, I'm not after the money. I just want the title. And he's going, I don't understand. Yeah. This is making no sense, right? And then after that, I had to explain it to my team, and I said, oh, it's a cultural thing. You come from a different background where your title means a lot. So it doesn't matter what you're earning necessarily, but your status matters. So people are after the title, not so much the money. And it was something that they actually had to get their head around. It's you can call me anything you want, just pay me. But not everybody thinks the same way. So this is another classic example of understanding why people are actually wanting that, communicate and make them understand, as opposed to actually appearing like this person is just really difficult.
Yeah. A very good point. So we've got a couple of questions here, Teeshal. One is, can you share some experience which works the best while communicating with C-suite?
Yeah. Okay. So definitely do quite a bit of that, and they are not after the detail. they are just not up to the detail, right? So I think coming from an engineering background, especially when you're dealing with project engineers and project managers, they're like, okay, I just need to tell you everything. This is the problem, this is the solution, this is what we did. And when you're dealing with the senior execs, you're like, high level, what does this actually mean to us? What's the problem? Why is this the problem? How can we solve it? And what happens if we don't actually solve the problem? Like, just give it to me in that sort of form. But not everybody does that, and I think you lose your audience if you don't actually understand what they're actually after in the first instance. And this is something we actually learned in the coaching college as well. They were talking about chunking up and chunking down, right? So when you're actually working with people who are, I'm not going to say leaders are at the top, because we're all leaders in our own right. We've got to lead ourselves before we can lead others. But when you talk about C-suites, they're after the big stuff, right? They just give me high level sort of summary. So you don't go into those sort of meetings with them, giving them this 50-page report, expecting them to read every page. Just give them a very colorful diagram that sort of explains everything like in one hit when they're actually looking at it. So I think being really clear about your audience, the why, the what, the how, and what if, I think those are like the 4 super important questions to ask when you're actually delivering. And it could be writing an email, it could be having a conversation, whether it's to your team, your direct team, or it could be reporting when you're managing up. I think we use the same sort of principle.
Teeshal, you were saying about how executives communicate and they lead a high level. I just had a brief moment because recently my CIO walked into the workshop we were presenting into, and he said, "Tell me how many slides do you have?" And we looked at our slide pack, and we said 25 slides. And he said, "You do know that every slide that you create, there is a fairy dying somewhere." So that was his way of saying, reduce the number of slides. We've got 25 fairies who died somewhere. So to your point, I just had a bit of a, that light bulb moment. He said exactly the same thing. Give me more in less. So show me in 4 slides what the problem is, how you're going to solve it, and what do you need me for in this? What do you need from me? So very well put. There's another question around accent. Many migrants put on an accent in a professional landscape. What are your thoughts towards that?
Be you. I think that's it. It's be you. We've got a team that's relatively diverse, and I've had this a few times. People will say to me, I can't progress. I'm like, why? Because I don't actually have the accent. Like, I don't sound like everybody else. I'm like, okay, and you speak English and I hear you fine. Because, oh no, but that's not the point. The point is I don't have the accent. I don't sound like that. And I said, well, use it to your strength. You're not going to have the accent. Just deal with it. That's it. You are where you are. What can you leverage now? What can you actually use as an asset, as a strength, as opposed to finding ways on why it would work, find what ways would actually make it work. And it's really interesting because I almost feel it's a cop-out. It really is. I'm just saying it bluntly. Don't use it reasons like my age, I'm too old, my color, my cultural background. Man, seriously, you're given what you're given, right? What are you going to do about it? Like, just focus on, at the end of the day, you got to focus on what you can control. You can control your thoughts, your beliefs, your actions. Those are things you can control. Other things you can't control. So it's really as simple as that. And yeah, it's really funny. Sorry, I'm just thinking about it and think of the number of times I've actually come across like, oh, but I just don't sound like them, But then I'm not as funny as them. Like, they don't get my jokes. I'm like, yeah, okay. So just do your own. Because you're unique in your own way, right? Your cultural background, the way you are, that's who makes you you. So why do you want to be somebody else? And the thing is, people see right through. Like, you try and be somebody else, you can probably do it for the first sort of 5 seconds, and then you go, okay, I'm reverting back to who I am as a person. And how can you maintain that? I don't know, that sort of profile when it's not you. So I think you've got to be you, and I think if you're expecting other people to accept you, you first need to accept yourself. And for someone sort of saying, hey, I've got this accent, I can't do this, it just shows that you haven't accepted and embraced who you are as a person, yet you're expecting other people to actually accept you for the way you are. So, in a lot of the leadership sort of topics that we cover, it always starts with self. It always starts with look within. Where are you at? Where do you want to go? What's holding you back? Like, look within. But most of the time, I'm guilty of it too. Like, it's easier to sort of look outside and go, oh, it's because of that happened and that happened. That's why I can't progress. And yeah, I think it's all within.
I love the messages you're giving here, Teeshal. I think I'm just loving this conversation. It's like, so on point, like, great messages. I hope the people who are listening are taking away a lot of value from this. So, I thank you so much for these messages. I have a question for you, and this is something this is a question, and this is something I tend to ask a lot of the guests is, a lot of us, when we talk about being professionals of color, we see color as a barrier, and you were just touching on this point as well now, is, don't make it an excuse. But, there is some reality in perception, and there is some reality in how people, view you when you come from different cultures, and especially when you have a different skin color to them. What has your experience been when it comes to being a professional of color in a predominantly sort of white corporate Australia?
Yeah, so I guess being a civil engineer and being in construction, there's not many females to start with, and then you add the complexities or not complexities, but then you add another layer of coming from a culturally diverse sort of background. There's not many of us. So within the organization I'm in, there's probably about 40 program managers, 3 women, 1 culturally diverse, which is me. So there's not many around, right? But and that's clearly my point. The point is there's not enough of them stepping up to the next level. It's not because like people are not giving you the opportunity. It's whether they see themselves taking those opportunities on as a starting point. And I think it's our role, like to take on those roles, to actually lead the way and be that beacon of light and hope for others that it is possible. Like if you can do it, others can as well. And I think one of the really big things that, I think when I started my sort of entrepreneurship journey, it was all about, I can conquer the world, it's me, it's like, my brand, my business and all that kind of stuff. And then after having a bit of gray hair and getting a little bit older and wiser, I think, I just went, who around me has actually got the goals that I want to have achieved? Like who leads a life that I look at and go, that's exactly what I want. And once I've actually worked out who they are, and number 2, more importantly, their values align with mine, because you can have success in so many ways, but then if your values don't align, then what's the point? Once you've found these people, just go after them and get them to help you. Like don't work it out all on your own. Like why? Like you don't need to satisfy this big ego. Like if someone's already done it, just go learn from them, and shortcut your learning process by just learning from them. I think I've been really, really big on that, and just have mentors, have coaches around you that can actually help you and guide you to get there a lot quicker.
Yeah. Oh, very well said, Teeshal. I think one of the things that me and Sangeeta, when we started this group itself, we thought about this as a biggest barrier that professionals of colors have is asking for help. They have this barrier on putting their hands up and saying, I've got a problem and I need to go to an expert and potentially pay for an expert advice. And you would see there would be a barrier around not wanting to do that because, it won't be looked upon as a right thing to do. But I also saw that that's exactly what all the white Australians were doing. That's exactly how they were rising up the ladder, by taking that mentorship, and they're taking by sponsorship, and then taking that coaching to just keep going at it and having that support all the way up. So how important, and I know you've touched base to say, this is important to go out and reach to the mentorship, but there is a lack of that to start with, which is why we started this APOC, to kind of bring together all these mentors and coaches in this group so we can support the professional of color. But how important has that been in your career, or even in the careers of the other professional of color you have come across who have rised up the ranks and achieved their dreams? In your discussions and in your experience, what role a good mentor and a good coach plays in a profession in growing their career?
Yeah. Quite frankly, you can't do without, is how I feel. when we started our renovation business, we were buying distressed properties, so properties that were going through bank auctions and learning how to buy them at the right price, right? So there was a course that I actually undertook in Sydney, and this lady was actually charging $35,000 for a mentoring program for 12 months. I was like, $35,000 is a lot of money for 12 months, right? Like, how much access do I actually have to her? Like, I was living in Western Australia, she was in Sydney, I might see her once every couple of months. So my husband said to me, "Are you serious about this?" I'm like, "Yeah." Because, "Have you renovated before?" And he's like, "No." So neither have I. "But is this what we want to do?" Because, "Yes." "But she's done it. Why not just learn from her?" She goes, "But it's $35,000. I'm like, "Yes, it is. But how long more and how much money is it going to cost us if we did it on our own?" We paid $35,000, but I tell you what, paid the money, and then inside I'm like, I got to make this money back. Like, man, it's $35,000, right? So, and we did. So when we flipped our first property, we made all of that money back pretty much in the first property itself, which was great, and everything else on top was, profit, right? And also a lot of tears and sweat and stuff like that. But we made that back. And I'm such a firm believer, and like no one can seem to change my mind around this, because my mom says as well. She goes, "Why is it that you just pay people all this money?" And I said, "Well, do you have the expertise that they have? No, so where am I going to get out?" Like, so, and now I actually have a mentor and a coach as well that I've had quite a few of them throughout my life for different things. But at the moment, my husband and I are actually building like an online business on the side, and he's a rocket scientist, right? Works for NASA in Houston, successful guy, retired in his late 20s. And I was like, "Man, you're pretty awesome. You retired early. You're going to work because it's fun." And I was like, never ever heard of people who go to work for fun and don't even care about the paycheck. I was like, "I want what you have. Teach me, please." And like, we pursued them. So right now, very, very blessed that we're part of their mentoring sort of group, and they're helping us. But the point is, right? Ultimately, you gotta look for these people. They've got those goals that you're after. Just seek them out and ask. And I guess the other thing that you mentioned before about mentors, right? Some people go, "Oh, but if I ask for help, they're gonna say no. They might say no to me," right? The number of times I've come across mentors and I go, "Hey," and I do this a lot with like the team that I lead, and I part of their development plan. I was like, "You need a mentor. Like, this is where you want to go. Look for someone in the business that you think will be able to support you." Because, "Oh, but I don't think they'll talk to me." I'm like, "Have you asked?" "No." I'm like, I sent an email and I said, "Hey, introducing person X to Y. Would you have the capacity to mentor this person, or what is it, 1 hour a month?" He goes, "Yes." "Yeah, sure, we'll be done for that." It's like, "What's the problem?" Done. And then when I actually asked the mentors and I said, "Are you open to this?" Because no one asked me. No one actually asked me for help. So how do I go and find these people and go, "I'm ready to help. Anybody want some help?" Because the challenge is like people who have a lot of knowledge and experience, they want to help others. They genuinely do, but no one's asking them. So how do they do it? So just gotta ask away, I reckon.
Yeah, it's true. I think a lot of people want to give, and especially when they've learned stuff, they're more than happy to pass it on. And I think you're absolutely right. It's just about asking, and it's just about people. If you put up your hand for something, you will find there's so many people out there who are generous enough and want to give enough. And sometimes you get I think you made this point a bit earlier in the day as well, in terms of the fitting yourself into a mold. A lot of people think they need permission to have a mentor. They need to have permission to be able to ask for something, and it's themselves that don't give themselves permission, right? You have to give yourself permission to do things. Nobody else is going to come and give you permission and say, "Hey, I give you permission to go find a mentor. I give you permission to go find a coach." And I think that's one of the things that most of us, who've been brought up in traditional cultures, tend to, want permission from somebody to do what we want to do. And I think you touched on a great point. It's just just get out there and ask. Don't stop yourself from it.
Yeah, so I think it's coming from a place of just needing that self-acceptance. Because we as human beings want to be liked, right? We want people to like us. We want people to say, "Hey, good job. You're on the right track. You're doing the right thing." You're wanting that. But when everyone around us don't actually have the results we're after, then what? Like, so unless you're completely happy with the status quo and everyone, and you are where you are, everybody's on the same track and you're happy with that, then go along with that. You don't need to do any more, right? But if you want more, and you're asking more out of yourself, then you almost have to not follow the herd and look at what others are actually doing. So I think it comes back to the fact that, what is your self-image? What is your why? Like, what's driving you? So it's all those philosophical questions that you need time to sort of think and go, okay, well, what's important for me?
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Viniti, in your experience, and because both of you sort of work in the life coaching kind of a space, I think I'll be keen to hear both your answers. Is what is the one thing that you find that does not work for people when it comes to email communication, right? So we spoke about body language, we spoke about all these things, but tell us a bit more about when people communicate by email. And I'm sure you come across a number of professionals in your own coaching spaces that have communication as one of the key things to work on and focus on. So tell me a bit more about email communication, because every professional has to do it. And I think, Teeshal, you touched a little bit upon the how, why, where kind of what kind of a structure. But what is the one thing that you find that people just really, really miss out on when it comes there? And what's the one thing that they should be doing more of?
Too long. It's too long.
I'll take it. I'll tell you one thing, which is a struggle. Yeah, which is a really big struggle in emails, is an articulation. Articulation, especially for professional of colors, is a challenge even in spoken English, because we are thinking in a different language, and we are trying to translate as we speak. So even speaking, to articulate a subject, it's very difficult. And then you are asking somebody to write it down. So, trying to be grammatically right and trying to use the right words at the right places is a second level challenge. And I still struggle till date. I mean, spanning the 25 years of corporate experience, studying in America, studying in English medium, where if we spoke, I remember in my primary school, if I spoke, there used to be a monitor. It's a known word in India. If you grew up, there's going to be one person monitoring everything in the breaks. And if you spoke a Hindi word or any other language word, you have to pay 5 rupees for every word that you had spoken that was non-English, right? So even though that English speaking comes from that young thing, the first form to think is unfortunately the mother tongue. And then we translate it. So what I have seen, for specifically, not even for professional of colors, I see it a lot in whites as well, the articulation. The email starts with something, and then it ends with something, and you're wondering, what was the message in that email? Do you really get what's the context? Like, why are you telling me this? Or why is it important for me? Or what am I supposed to do with this email? I think that articulation for me is something that's a very big challenge in written emails. And how I overcome that is using Grammarly. There is not an email that I send through without using Grammarly. It has been my lifesaver for the last 3 years or more, maybe, in writing emails, because I'm now writing emails to executives, and I want to make sure that not only what I'm writing is correct, it is written in a language which is very polite, or very it's not suggestive, but very specific to what I'm trying to communicate. And knowing my weakness there, and I've not been very great in writing emails all through my life. I'm well in communicating verbally, but writing is not my strength. I realized that I needed support, right? And I looked for coaches and mentors, and I realized this has got to be my lifetime problem. And Grammarly kind of came into my savior, and it has really lifted my writing skills, which is a secret that I'm letting out, because most of my posts are run through Grammarly. So now everybody knows if they're reading a good post, it's not me, it's Grammarly who's doing it. So that's been my one thing in written communication, Sangeeta.
Yeah, good one.
And I think I was listening to a mentor recently, and he was asked him, what do you actually miss most, or what do you not miss about work now that you've retired? Because emails. I do not miss the emails, right? Because you think about your day, and how many emails a person actually gets in their inbox, right? And sorry, I actually started off with just saying it's too long, because most emails that I get are just too long. Like, people feel the need to make it flowery. Let's expand it by actually adding the word then and the, and maybe if we did this, or you know what I mean? Like you're making it longer than it needs to be. So I think that formula that I actually learned about the why, the what, the how, and the what if, like those 4 things is what I incorporate into all my emails. Like why am I even sending you this email? What's the purpose? What is it actually about? How is this a problem? And what will happen if you don't solve it? Like it's literally covering those 4 elements. And like I said, I covered that 4 in everything that I do: emails, communication, presentations, up, down, wherever, left, right. It's that same sort of format, because it answers the questions that needs to be answered.
Yeah, great. It's a great framework for people to take away as well, right? Think about these 4 key things, and that's perfect. And your point as well, Viniti, around the messaging, I think that's one, if you follow this framework, I think, just being really succinct about what you're trying to say, the message gets across so much clearer. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, just being conscious of time now. So last question from you, Teeshal, what's that one great wisdom around communication that you would like to leave the professional of colors with, around their beliefs, or how can they improve, from where they are, how can they move to the next level in their communication in their lives?
Yeah, I think I should have saved one of those quotes for the last question, right? Instead of giving it in between the talk today. But I was going to say that I think that the quote that I really resonate with is seek to understand before being understood. I think if people sort of really took the time to ask questions and really seek to understand before coming up with your own ideas, I think it will actually solve like 80% of people's issues and problems, because you're not, we won't actually have the stuff that you were talking about before, Sangeeta, about miscommunication and all of that, because you'll be really clear on what the person's actually asking you to start with. And this is probably a good segue, and sorry, Vinati, I didn't check in with you before, but we're actually running, Grid Leadership's actually running, actually I'm presenting a webinar, a free webinar next week on the 1st of December, and it's all about using emotional intelligence to supercharge your leadership. So, I mean, it's open to all of your members, and, to actually attend, and if you connect with me through LinkedIn, I'll be really happy to sort of share the information through, but I'm really hoping that, communication and emotional intelligence is like one of those things that really goes in like hand and glove. It's great that you can communicate, but you also really need that emotional intelligence side to really get the message across in the best way possible.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Teeshal. I think that's very generous of you. And to everybody who's watching, I mean, do take up the offer, because I mean, you've heard Teeshal today. She's awesome. And we just, thank you so much. Really appreciate you opening up this to the community here.
No, thank you. And thank you for letting me share. Like, it's been such an enjoyable chat with you guys as well. So, yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you, everybody who has attended this session today, and who's going to be watching it later on in the group as well. We have something coming up for next year. This is our last live with a guest. We will be coming up again, myself and Sangeeta, for the last live and closing off for this year, giving you a sneak peek into our next year's strategy and where we are going. So stay tuned for that. And one of those words, Sangeeta. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time to talk a little bit on that. Other than that, you guys who don't get time to come and watch us, please enjoy your trips. I know a lot of people in this group are traveling after the lockdown has opened, and I think that's probably the reason a lot of them are not here today as well. So, everybody have a very safe holiday, and we are really up for big things in coming year. So anything, over to you, Sangeeta.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you, Teeshal. It's been lovely to have you on the show with us tonight. And everybody, thank you so much for watching and supporting our lives throughout the year. Like Viniti said, we'll be back again for one last live for the year in a fortnight from now. So watch out, and there's going to be some big announcements coming your way in that particular one. So we'd love to see you there. Thanks everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see you in a fortnight.